Hey everybody, Christopher here with Banger. I thought today we would take a look at comparing the Sage 300 report building process to the Sage Intacct report building process. Now, as opposed from building something from scratch, what I thought we'd do today is kind of take a look at how two reports are put together and touch on most of the main tools you would use to build from scratch. So what I've done is I've found two different reports that share very similar information, have pretty much the exact same level of detail that we can take a look at in each system and modify to bring more in line with each other. So on the left side of the screen, we've got the JC WIP as of a specific date report from Sage 300 CRE. We can see that we're pulling at a job detail level. We get the total estimate, the revised contract, cost at completion, job to date cost, to date build, and we're calculating our billing in excess and our cost in excess, or our over under billing. And in that means we're touching on our original estimate, our estimate changes, and that gets us our revised estimate or total estimate. We're getting the revised contract, which is the original contract plus any changes. And the job to date cost is then used to estimate the cost at completion based on the calculated percent complete. So we're getting at that job level those main four pieces: the estimate, the contract, the job to date cost, and the to date build. Now, over on the right-hand side of the screen, we have the Sage Intacct Project Overview Financial Report. We're getting pretty much the same information here. We're getting a contract amount, we're getting an estimate amount, we're getting the total build and the total cost. Again, at a job level, I happen to know in both of these cases, we're calculating it based on the originals and the changes for the contract and the estimate. Now, in the Sage Intacct version, we're not calculating billing in excess or cost in excess, but we do have that same amount of data being pulled in and then calculated against. So in all reality, these are very, very similar reports, and they'll be great for us to compare the process between the two systems. Let's go ahead and start with Sage 300 CRE. So let's go ahead, bring this a little bit more in focus so we can see what we're doing and take a little bit more look at the report. Again, as we said, we've got a job level of detail. We've got our total estimate, our revised contract, our job to date cost, and our to date build. These are going to be the four columns we focus on as we look at what we're modifying. And then we'll look at what we can do with the formulas that are calculated against those afterward. So we'll go ahead and close our print preview and take a look at this report in Report Designer. First things first, let's take a look at what it required to open up that report form. So we clicked on Open, and by default, we started in the company data folder. We had to know that we needed to go up to the 9.5 folder, into accounting, into reports, and then we had to find that particular report file in the list of all the reports. If we didn't know what the report file name was, that's the schedule of WIP. That's the WIP we're working with. If we didn't know what the report name was, we would have had to open Report Manager in Job Cost, find the report in that list, get the report file name, and then come into Report Designer to open that design. So just as an example of how to open that up, then we come in here and we take a look at the data on the report itself. Now, the first thing we see is a bunch of just rectangles full of what kind of looks like nonsense unless you know what you're doing. We know that the bold text here is going to be headers, and the lighter text below it, the lighter weight text below it, is going to be our detail level information. If we'd like to see something that tells us it's actually going to be that, Then we'll want to go ahead and choose the print controls view from the dropdown. And we can see now that this is blue and this is black. So any fields that are colored the same as each other have the same print controls. Blue fields are print once on every page, and black fields are print once per job. I think what we'd like to do is probably modify both of these reports to print once per cost code for a specific job. So the first thing we're going to need to do is start getting some fields printing once per cost code. We'll go ahead and take this set of data or numbers. We're going to move it down so that it's not on the same row as the job name. We'll click down in the print once per, change that to cost code. And now you can see, I didn't have all these selected. So we'll reselect all of them after we move them down, then go set our print for it. So now we can see red fields print once per cost code, black fields print once per job, blue fields print once on every page. The next thing we'll want to do is take a quick preview and see if that made everything work just by telling it to print then. Okay, so we can see we do appear to be getting one row for every cost code, just at a guess, but all of the values appear to be the same. So now we want to find out how are we powering these particular fields. Again, we're going to be interested in the estimate, the revised contract, the job to date cost, and the to date build. So to do that, we'll double click on the field to find out, it's a formula. I happen to know the rest of these are formulas as well, so we won't go through the process of finding out that all of them are formulas. By going into formulas with a field already selected, it automatically highlights it, and we can see what the formula is. To change that formula, we'll click change, and we can now start clicking within it to find out a little bit more information. So the formula in use here is an A sum, or an aggregating sum, or an accumulating sum. And that format has an A sum, then you open a set of parentheses, you tell it what field to break on a particular table. So for every record in that table, I want to accumulate the information, in this case a sum, a specific field where that particular field in the break field is the same. So for every job that's the same on the JC transaction table, we then take this set of data over here and sum it. This is then filtered down by whatever filters we might have on the report. And so what we've got here is an if statement that's saying if something is true, then give this value, otherwise give another value. So in this case, if the transaction type is OS or AEC, then we'll check if it's less than the cutoff date we're providing. And if it is, we'll give it the amount. If you don't specify a false value, it assumes a 0. So a few things we have to know here. We have to know what field to be looking for on that table. We have to know that the field uses a value OEST as a string for original estimate, and that it uses AEC for approved estimate changes. Then we also, have some typical pieces like we need to know equals is equals and less than or equal to is less than or equal to, and we need to know what field we want to sum up. It just so happens that on this table, we can quite quickly change job for cost code and say I want to get it for every cost code that's the same, and then we'll come back and change the job later. So we'll go ahead and set cost code, and then we're going to do that same thing for to date build. We're going to do the same for revised contract. And the same for job to date cost. These are all the same general idea as each other. The total estimate is probably the easiest to look at and read. just because the rest of them are going to have quite a few pieces of if it's this or this or this. That's a little bit more complicated, but they're all doing the same thing. If the transaction type is a specific transaction type or another specific transaction type or another, then if the transaction occurs on or before the cutoff date provided when you run the report, then sum the amount. All right, so we've changed total estimate to date billed, revised contract, job to date cost. Go ahead and close that and take a quick look at the report. Perfect. So now we can see we are getting information that's different per cost code, and we'll be able to put the cost code and description in there. Now let's go ahead and get our cost code and description and bring it in. Then we'll save the changes where we're at and take a look at doing effectively what we've done here over in Sage Intacct. So the first thing we're going to need to do is get the information for which cost code it is added to the list. So what we want to do is view our field list, and then we're going to add the cost code to the report. So the cost code field's been added to the report. We'll click on it so we can move it and line it up with job. Then we need to get the description for that cost code as well. And because this could be different for every job, we'll have to pull that from the JC cost code table. So we're going to make a formula. We're going to make a new formula. We're going to use a lookup formula in this formula, or a lookup function in this formula. And if you don't know what functions are available to you, you'll need to come into the help menu, come into your list of functions, find the function you're interested in, and then get your syntax for that function. So in this case, we're going to look up a particular field based on the key values for the table that that field exists on. To find out what the key values are, you'll need to print out an available fields list or use a product like Quick Aim that has a database dictionary in it, which will give you a list of the key fields for a particular table. In this case, I happen to know that the key values for the JC cost code table that we're going to use are going to be job, extra, and cost code. So we'll go ahead and close this. We're going to say we want to look up a particular field. The table we want isn't in the list, so we're going to come in and add it. And we'll be sure not to accidentally click extra tables in here when we go to add, because we only want to add the tables we need so that we don't clutter this list. We'll say we want to get the description off of the cost code table, and our key fields are going to come from JC transaction. That's the job, extra, and cost code. We'll close our parentheses. We'll say OK. And we're going to name this cost code description. We'll close this, and we'll add that field to the list by changing the table we're in and finding the formula we just created. We'll go ahead and preview this to make sure everything's working, and then we'll head over to Intacct. All right, so we can see that we are pulling now the cost codes and their descriptions. They're being associated with the total estimate, cost of completion, job to date cost, and the percent complete. We'll go ahead and close our print preview, and we'll head on over to Intacct. So if we come into Intacct, we'll see very similar data like we said. We've got our contract amount, which is the revised contract. We've got our estimate amount, which is our revised estimate. We've got our total build, which is the same to date build, and the total cost, which is the same to date cost. We'll go ahead and close our preview here and take a look at the report in Intacct. So the first thing we'll do is show you how do we get to the report to edit it. Fairly straightforward. We're going to go into reports, financial reports. We'll leave this, that's okay. We're going to find the report that we're interested in this case, the project overview. We'll click View. In this case, we're not in the entity that owns this particular report, so we will have to duplicate it before we make any modifications. There would have been an edit button if you were in the entity that owned the report. So we would have been in top level in this case. We'll go ahead and duplicate this report. We'll call this one Project Overview by Cost Code. We'll say OK. And then we'll see that we've got our project overview by cost code with an edit button. We'll go ahead and click that. Now we've got a report that we can look at and edit in Sage Intacct. So the first thing we're going to do here is take a look at what's powering our rows. We'll go to the Rows tab. We'll see that we're looking at the dimension structure, projects, jobs. If you want more information about this rows section, you can find a previous series of live streams I did on financial report modification. But we'll just go into how do we get a different set of data in here for now. So we want to select a different dimension structure. We want to power it by cost code. And we want to we'll go ahead and add a new one here just to make sure everything's exactly what we want. We want to get one that's, let's just call it all cost codes. So we'll click in the field name, call it all cost codes. And then once we leave that field, it's going to automatically populate these. And we'll be interested in either a hierarchy of cost code structures or cost code groups. We're just going to go ahead and go with cost code groups. And we'll add a new group here. We'll give it a name. In this case, we'll go with all cost codes. And we'll describe it as all cost codes. And then what we want to do is set a single filter on this. So what we're going to do is say a cost code ID with an operator is not empty. You do, when you're setting up a dimension group, you do have to use some kind of filter for an all members group type. And this will say the required cost code ID field has to have a value in it. And that means we're going to pull in everything. Since it's a required field, if it has a value, it exists, and that's all of them. So we'll go ahead and save that. That cost code group is automatically selected, and we'll add it to our cost code group for the dimension structure. This works very, very similarly to account groups. Same general idea applies here. It's just that instead of account groups, we're looking at dimension groups. We'll go ahead and save the structure. That structure is automatically selected here. We'll tell it to include it in the report. And we'll click OK. We'll preview our report. We're going to go ahead and remove this as of date and preview what we've got. So we can see here, we left the original project structure, project's dimension structure in here. That gives us a summary of the project. And then we also have all of our cost code information. Now you might be asking, why do I have so many of the same cost code? That's going to be because each of these cost codes is considered a separate record from each other because it's actually the job in combination with the cost code that creates a record. So these are, while the same ID and description on cost code, these are technically different records, different pieces of information in the database. So what we're going to end up doing is filtering this down to a single job because we're not actually interested in pulling in more than one job's cost codes at a time for this case. So we'll go ahead and close our preview, and we'll note that we took about 35 seconds to do the exact same thing in Intacct as in Sage 300. It was a lot more simple to change our rows. So we've got that set up, and we'll want to go ahead and pop back over to Sage 300 to take a look at the next step. So the one thing we want to do in Sage 300 here first is go ahead and save the changes we've already made so that we have a new copy of the report. So we're going to go ahead and come into File, Save As. We'll call this as a specific date by cost code, and we'll save that change. So fairly straightforward there, about the same difficulty as Sage Intacct. Next thing we're going to do is take a look at modifying some of the other formulas in this system to kind of bring this in a little bit more and do a little bit of formatting. So the first thing that we want to do in that is let's go ahead and do a little bit of formatting for our line spacing so that when we do preview it, we get a little bit more information at once. In this case, we had those blank lines between each cost code. We don't really want to see that, so we're going to go into line spacing. We're going to come into cost codes, and we'll say we want a single line between each cost code. Do a quick preview of that. Perfect. This is all set up a little bit better here. You can see it does come in and automatically add a blank line between our divisions. That's kind of nice. We do like that. And then we want to take a look at the way our revised contract to date build are both set up. Now, in this particular case, it would have automatically given us a split if we were billing by the exact cost codes. In this case, we aren't. So what we want to do is set this up to be either a total value at the bottom or the top, or some similar piece. To keep the two the same, we're going to go ahead and set it at the top, and we will set up this to calculate totals across the top. In the case of the way Sage 300 works, we can get our revised contract and our to-date build simply by not having a cost code associated with them. It gives everything that's being billed for this job, everything that was to-date build and contract. All those values that are recorded to the job cost transaction table are recorded against no cost code, and so it sums against no cost code, and it's perfectly fine. We can actually just say, let's move these up. So revised contract will move up. To-date build will move up. Too far here. We'll move up, keep it in the same spot, do a quick preview, and that will give us the right values in the right area. We're going to end up getting rid of our billing in excess and cost in excess here. We can actually do this just by getting these fields all together. We do have to be careful that we are looking at the correct fields and that we only highlight the correct fields when we go to do this in bulk. But once we've got the fields we're interested in, we can just hit the delete key and say that's fine. We want to clear the fields within the block. And now we have a set of information that's fairly useful. We've got our percent complete, which is not being totaled for the whole job. And we've got all of these that are not being totaled for the whole job. So we want to get our summary back, and we want to get our percent complete for the whole job back. So let's go ahead and come into formulas and get our summary level information back, and we'll print that once per job. So what we're going to do here is find our total estimate, make a copy of the formula, call this total estimate job. We'll say OK. We're going to change that, and we're going to put this back to a job sum. We're going to do the same thing for the revised, or not the revised contract, the cost at completion, which is just a formula that happens to be useful and works. We'll come back and modify that after. We've got our job to date cost that we're interested in modifying. This one we need to copy first. We'll call this JTD cost job. Say OK. We'll change this to look at the job. And then we've got, as well as the JTD cost, the job to date cost, we have the percent complete. So we'll want to take a look at that as well. Percent complete is also looking at the other formulas that are in use. So in this case, the job to date cost and the total estimate are being divided and multiplied by 100. So we need to recreate the same thing, but we're going to do it with the job to date cost job and the total estimate job. So we'll go ahead and make a copy of this. We will call it percent complete job. Say OK. We'll come in and change this, and we can find our design formulas. We're looking for the job to date cost. So we'll get rid of that field in our formula. We'll get the job version and the total estimate. We'll get rid of the cost code version, get the job version. We'll say OK. And then we need our cost at completion for jobs. So we're going to find our cost at completion. And we can see that we're taking the total estimate. We're multiplying it by, let's see, the design formula 1% complete. 1 minus the percent complete. So let's go ahead and go into change so we can actually get the highlighting. It turns blue if it's a field. It's black if it's type text. So we're taking the total estimate, multiplying it by 1 minus percent complete plus the job to date cost. And that's to give us our cost at completion. So in this case, we want to get our total estimate at the job level from our design formulas. The percent complete is a percent complete job. And the job to date cost at the job level. Go ahead and say OK. And that gives us the total estimate at the job level, the cost at completion at the job level, the job to date cost at the job level, and on-screen percent complete is multiplying our percent complete by 100. And it looks like I had the wrong percent complete selected here. So we do want to take this, and we will call this one on screen percent complete job. We're going to change this one to get the actual percent complete. We'll say OK. Here, we'll leave that the way it is. We can see that these two are very similar, and these two are very similar now. It's okay that we have parentheses there. Now we'll go ahead and put those values on the report. So we are going to find the total estimate job. We're going to find the cost at completion here, job. Oh, nope, that was percent complete. So we'll find this field. We're actually going to go ahead and just move this over and we will resize it. So we've got 9 length with 2 decimal places. We'll set that to 9 length with 2 decimal places. And that will be in the same size as those. Go ahead and find our cost at completion at the job level. Which it looks like we didn't actually do together. So we'll go ahead and fix that. But let's put our job to date cost on here. And then we'll come back and get our cost at completion. Make sure we've got that at the job level. So yes, we got distracted and didn't copy it. So we're going to copy this. This will be cost at completion job. And what happened was we didn't duplicate it. So we're going to come back and get our, I already forgot what values we were pulling in there. So we're going to change this. We're looking for the total estimate at the cost code level. We'll do total estimate. Then we want the percent complete at the cost code level. And then we want the job to date cost at the cost code level. We'll say, okay, we'll close. And then now we can put our cost at completion job in here. And we want to print all of these once per job, with the exception of revised contract and to date bill. If we take a quick glance at this report, we'll see we now have a summary of the job and cost code breakdown without bringing in to date build or revised contract, because we don't have per cost code information on that for this job. Next thing we need to do is set up a quick filter so that we're only pulling in one job at a time. So we'll go ahead and go into the prompt windows. We'll move some things around to make room for it. We're going to create a field. It's a text type field. We'll call it job. Say okay. What I miss? Oh, size. We want the size to be relatively close to our job size. In this case, the sample data has 2-3, which leaves us with a total of 6 characters. And we'll kind of center this a bit so that everything looks pretty nice together. We'll shrink our table, our window down a little bit so that it looks nice. We'll run a test to make sure it looks nice. We'll cancel out of that. We'll say okay to save that information. And we'll make sure that that did come through. Great. Now we'll take the conditions. And we want the job to be equal to. We'll list our items. We'll go to prompt fields. And we'll say job. Say okay. And okay. We'll say we want our cutoff date to be 07/20/23 and our job to be 03/001. I think I may have accidentally included punctuation where I didn't want to. Yep. And so we will go ahead and see our job when we run that correctly with the job in there. We also have the option of using the range selection I didn't mean to do that. And so we can go ahead and save this now. It's not necessarily 100% perfect. We could come back, make a few changes, a few tweaks if we wanted to, but it gets us the information we need with the filter we need. Let's go ahead and pop back out, come back over to Intacct, and finish up kind of the same thing. So what we did in Sage 300, we cut down our columns to be the total estimate, the revised contract, the cost at completion, the job to date cost, the percent complete, and the total build. So over here, we're going to need to do pretty much the same thing. A lot of it we'll be able to just cut out and then be able to go back and view what we needed. The one thing we do need to make a significant change to is the filters. So we'll come down to filters. And we will make sure that we have prompt selected for job. If this wasn't selected, we would need to go ahead and check that box. We're actually not too interested in the location for this one. It's a Timberline General Construction specific, so it's only on one entity, and there's no locations under that entity, so we don't need that prompt when we go to preview it. We do want a prompt for the as of date so that we can have everything filtered by a specific date. And then let's go ahead and preview our report. It's not going to prompt us for a job during the preview in the designer. So we'll always see all of the jobs. Once we've saved these changes, we'll review those prompts and make sure they're working the way we would expect. All right, so the columns we want to get rid of in this case, we're going to get rid of the estimated gross profit, the estimated gross profit margin. We're going to get rid of the commitments. We're going to get rid of the gross profit. We're going to rename the percent spent. We're going to get rid of the percent billed. We're going to get rid of the project margin. That should give us all the same columns between Sage 300 and Sage Intacct. We'll go ahead and close our preview and come into our columns modification area in Sage Intacct. Okay, and here we'll be able to take a look at our columns that we need to get rid of. And all we're going to do in this case is actually check the hide column for the columns we don't want. So we don't want to see estimated gross profit. We'll select it. We'll hide the column. We don't want to see our profit margin. Select it and hide the column. We don't want to see the commitments. So we'll select it and hide the column. And we're going to keep that up for the rest of them that we don't want to see. And we want to rename our percent spent to percent complete. So here in the column title, we're going to go ahead and change that to percent complete. And then let's preview our changes. And we can see we've got the same 5 columns and we have one more to take a look at adding. So in Sage Intacct, we now have our revised contract, our revised estimate, our to-date build, our to-date cost, and our percent complete. The percent spent was the exact same formula as the percent complete formula in Sage 300, so we just renamed it to make a match. We'll go ahead and come back over here and think about how are we going to calculate our cost at completion. So if we want to pop back over to Sage 300 really quickly and find our cost at completion formula, we can see exactly what we used to calculate that. So we took the total estimate and we multiplied it by the percent complete, and then we added the job to date cost. So if we want that same formula, we're going to recreate it in Sage Intacct. So let's go ahead and go back over there. We'll want to add a column over here. So hover over the column we're interested in. Let's say we'll use the percent complete. We're just going to add a column to its right. It's going to take a moment because I'm in a development instance. So a lot of this moves quite a bit faster in your production instances. The column type that we want to use is going to be a computation summary on columns. And the first step we want to do is multiply the total estimate by the percent complete. So for creating that, we'll need to know what's the column number for the total estimate. That's the project estimate, column number 3. And we need to know the percent complete. That's column number 10. We'll open up the summary wizard. We'll say not a maximum. We want a multiply. And we want 3, 10. It's important not to put spaces here. And we will title this column the percent complete estimate. Actually, let's call this estimate complete. And this will be a hidden column. We'll need to perform another modification on that. So we'll add one more column to the right. We can only do our calculations one step at a time with these. So we've done one step, which is multiply the estimate by the percent complete. And because we couldn't do 1 minus the percent complete, what we're going to do is take the total estimate and subtract the estimate completed from it. And that will give us the remaining estimate. So it's a tweak on what the calculation was in Sage 300. So in this case, we're going to do another summary on columns. And the summary is going to be column 3 minus column 11. For subtraction, it matters what order it is. So if you want to subtract 11 from 3, you put 3 first, then it does a minus where that comma is and does the column you're interested in. And this is another one that we're going to hide. We'll go ahead and add a column to the right to get the column we're actually going to show, which is our cost at completion. To get the cost at completion, we're going to need our remaining estimate column number, and we're going to need our job to date cost, which is our total cost. So 8. And then our remaining estimate, which is 12. So we're going to make our new column once more be a computation summary on columns. This time we're going to do addition. With addition, it doesn't matter what order, but we're going to add 8 and 12. And we will call this cost at completion. And then let's preview to make sure everything's working. Okay, so we can see this pretty much agrees. This pretty much agrees. This agrees. So everything does appear to be working as expected at the project level. What we do see is we're getting fields that have zeros where maybe we don't necessarily want zeros in the per cost code information. So for example, we've got our to-date build, which we may not be billing at the cost code level. So we'll never really get a value for to-date build, and we may not be setting a contract at the cost code level. So we'll probably never get a value for the contract at the cost code level. So we'll go ahead here and close our preview and come over to the format. Come over to the format, and we want to then display a dash for 0. We'll go ahead real quick, one more preview. Helps clear this up, make it look a little bit easier to read, a little bit less dense with information. We'll go ahead and close our preview, and we will save our report and be done. We'll find our report down here, and we'll make sure that our filters make sense. So we'll do an HTML print. We've got an as of date that automatically populates with today's date. We've got a job dropdown. Let's go ahead and just select one of our GC jobs. And we can see now we've got one project with information about that particular project. It's hidden columns that don't calculate out because we didn't have any costs, so they just automatically go to 0, which keeps things concise. If we go ahead and run that again for one of our other jobs, we can see we have all 6 columns. We've got our contract amount, our estimate amount, our total build, our total cost, our percent complete, and our cost at completion, all calculated out with each line paid attention to. So every cost code and our project summary. I don't know about the rest of you. I find Sage Intacct much, much easier to work with. I think it's a simpler tool for reporting on some of these reports that can be built within Financial Report Designer. The custom report writer is also fairly straightforward and simple. Interactive custom report writer can be more and less complex, but I still find it in general a bit easier to work with than the similarly capable reporting tools for Sage 300. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream today, and I hope that you join us again in the future. Thanks.